Hi, nurses. Welcome to Shift Change, the podcast for nurse leaders who are ready to shift their thinking from just a nurse to claim their position as a powerful agent for change. I'm your host, Amy Deagle, founder and CEO of the International Network of Nurse Leaders. We believe in the power of nurses to change the world, so let's get started. Hi, nurses. Welcome to the Shift Change podcast. If you've tuned in before to the Shift Change podcast, welcome back. If this is your first time, welcome. I am Amy Deagle, founder and CEO of the International Network of Nurse Leaders, career and leadership coach for nurses, and host of the Shift Change podcast. So whether you're brand new here or a loyal listener, I am so grateful that our paths have crossed. I'm excited to see where this year of the nurse and midwife is going to take us, and I am so excited to be bringing you a special episode of the Shift Change podcast. So it's going to be called Coffee Break Edition. And the Coffee Break Edition shows are going to be a little different. They're going to be content-driven shows. So it's just going to be me and you, and we're going to be diving into all things leadership, change, and showing up on purpose in our lives. We'll still continue to release guest interviews on the Shift Change podcast about 3 times a month. And then on the 4th Monday will be the Coffee Break Edition show. So I hope you find value in these bonus episodes. I am so excited to be able to deliver something a little different to you. And I hope you will enjoy them alongside the other regular episodes. I'm really excited to use this show as an opportunity to dive into some tangible content that you can use in your work and home life. And as well, I'm going to be answering some of your questions that get submitted to me via email or social media. We're 1 month into the new year, the year that World Health Organization has designated as Year of the Nurse and Midwife. And while I see lots of promotion and celebration on social media, I'm interested to know if anything is different in your day-to-day life or your current practice. I'm guessing for most of you, that answer is no. Just because it's the year of the nurse and the midwife doesn't mean that anything is going to magically change for us. Each one of us needs to make a commitment to showing up, engaging in change, demonstrating personal leadership, and to really commit every day to those activities so that we really will see a change. I know some of you listening are dealing with fears and frustrations around budget cuts and layoffs, changing scopes of practices, organizations that operate on competition versus collaboration, and you're unsure of how you, just one person, can make any sort of difference. It kind of just seems so overwhelming. I get it, but the antidote to that feeling of powerlessness is personal responsibility. Let's work to change what we can. Let's control how we show up and offer our gifts and talents in service of the greater good. If we shift towards personal responsibility and working collaboratively instead of competition with each other, we would be able to make the type of change that actually makes a difference. I understand that it can feel overwhelming and you may not know where to start. But as they say, the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. So let's start somewhere. The key is to just start, regardless of how small, because it's the consistent practice and effort, regardless of how small those steps are, that makes all the difference in the end. The week-long spurt where you went to the gym every day for an hour is way less impactful than the 3 months of walking 20 minutes a day a few times a week. The results may take longer to show up, but the change is longer lasting, it's more sustainable, and therefore it's more impactful. So I'd like to talk with you today about personal leadership, which at its core is the most fundamental component to changing our lives. If we cannot lead ourselves well, how can we expect to lead others or lead change? You really don't have to do a thorough literature review to know that leadership in and of itself is a bit of an abstract concept. A quick Google search of what is leadership returns roughly 3 billion articles. And in that, not one agreed upon definition. So leadership experts Kouzes and Posner define leadership as the ability to influence others and move them towards a shared vision. Brené Brown states leadership is the responsibility of finding the potential in people and processes and then developing that potential. Simon Sinek defines it as the responsibility of protecting our people and advancing their potential. Kevin Krause states leadership is a process of social influence and maximizes the efforts of others towards the achievement of a goal. My own personal definition of leadership is that leadership is the act of inspiring ourselves and others to see a vision of a better tomorrow, empowering ourselves and others to act and contribute towards achievement of that vision, and to lead ourselves and others towards kindness, compassion, empathy, and connection. And I know that's quite a mouthful. Leadership is commonly viewed by the impact we have on the world around us, what we put into the world, how we lead others. But one of the most crucial pieces of being an effective leader is your ability to lead yourself. If you have aspirations of an official leadership or management position, a desire to get more involved or more engaged in advocacy or activism work, you want to feel a sense of empowerment in your everyday life, you must be able to lead yourself first. Leading self is the fundamental building block to everything else. Leading self is the first element we are going to dive deep into as we focus on growing ourselves as leaders through the next several months on this coffee break edition of the Shift Change podcast. Great leaders are self-aware. By understanding our own strengths, weaknesses, and preferences for how we see the world, we have a much better understanding of how we affect others. And when we understand ourselves and how we relate to others, we can work to become more aware of others' strengths, weaknesses, and preferences on how they show up in the world, so that we can meet them where they're at, which will help them flourish and grow into the people and leaders they want to become. I have a little personal story about this. I was doing some leadership training and we were doing the Myers-Briggs personality test. And one of the components of that test is how you take in information. And I'm a big picture, big vision person. I just kind of see the story and I can fill in the small details after that, but I have to see the big picture first, and I go off of emotion and those sorts of things. And whereas the other side are very detail orientated and they have to take in all the small details in order to see the big picture. So they need all the logistics figured out before they get to see the big vision. Well, when I took it back to my staff, I realized I was leading a team where 80% of my staff needed all those small details in order to see the big vision. And I was only giving them the big vision and saying, we'll figure out the small details as we go, because that's how I operate. And so when I was running into challenges in my staff meetings where nobody would contribute or we weren't having great discussions, any of those sorts of things, I realized it was because I wasn't giving them enough information. I wasn't helping fill in all those small details so that they could see the big picture. And it wasn't that they were trying to challenge me or trying to be difficult. It's just that's the way they needed to absorb information. So that was a huge change in my leadership style to meet my staff where they were at so that we could work together to solve some of those challenges. So where do we start? How do we get to know ourselves? It's deeper than knowing your favorite food or style of clothing, the music you like. It's about coming to understand how you show up in the world, what your triggers are, how people see you, how you take in information, what brings you joy and fulfillment, and also where are you just sleepwalking through life? What things have become just automatic on autopilot that you're not doing with intention? Once we kind of figure out where those things are at, we can start making a plan for how to manage them and how to move forward. How do we do that? Reflective journaling. Reflective journaling is a key practice for great leaders. Yes, this practice may be familiar to you already. Some of you just rolled your eyes. Others of you broke out in a cold sweat. And a small handful of you are nodding your heads in agreement. I remember my first year of nursing school. It seemed like we had to write a reflective journal about everything. You did a bed bath? Journal. Gave your first medication? Journal. Had a conflict with another student? Journal. Went for a walk, saw a tree? Journal. I'll admit the 18-year-old version of me did not see the value in the practice at the time. In fact, I remember counting down the days until school was over so that I wouldn't have to do another reflective journal again. Now, 14 plus years into my career, I'm so disappointed in myself that I didn't keep up that practice. I would have loved to have all those stories and learnings documented for review and reflection now. All those years of insights, reflections, and learnings, all those stories, they would be invaluable to me now. I started up my own reflective journaling practice last year, and to me, it was a key in my leadership development. It led to me showing up differently as a leader, understanding why certain people or circumstances triggered me, and allowed me to consciously work on areas that I wanted to improve. And the more people I talked to about it, the more I realized how impactful it truly is and how many successful, on-purpose people and leaders have a dedicated daily practice. So I'm going to ask you to put aside your bias towards the reflective journal, whether you loved it or hated it in school, whether the thought of journaling makes you break out in hives. This is a key component to understanding ourselves better. Some people are great at this practice. They instinctively know what to write, and other people, not so much. I want this practice to be as simple as possible. So we're going to try starting your practice with these 3 simple prompts. Number 1, what went well today? How did you show up in a certain situation that made you proud? Where did you make an impact today? What brought you joy? And just label them down and just start jotting whatever comes to mind. And it's best if you can do this at the end of the day right before bed so you can reflect back on your whole day. Number 2, what could have gone better? Where were you not the best version of yourself? What triggered you into showing up differently than you wanted? Why did you react that way in that certain situation? And what could you do about it to change the outcome next time? This number 2 prompt is so important. This is going to help us find our blind spots, how we're showing up, what triggers we have, and then we can start a plan on how to manage and overcome them so that we're showing up with intentionality and purpose every time. Number 3, how do I want to show up tomorrow? If I was intentionally showing up, what would that look like? What do I want to contribute to the world? And how can I show up as a better version of myself? That's it. Just start there. Some days it might feel like a giant struggle to get something down. Other days you'll fill 17 pages. The important thing is just to start. Make it a habit. Dedicate 5 minutes before bed each night. I know this is not rocket science. I know you've likely heard this advice before. You may not think it's going to work. You may not think that it will solve whatever's going on in your life now. You may not see how this is going to make you a better leader, an advocate for change, or just to feel control over your life again. You may feel like it doesn't apply to you, but I promise you it does. Commit to doing this for the next 30 days. And if you're really willing to commit, add a weekly review. This will increase your practice so much. So in addition to the daily journal, set aside a bit longer of a time frame once a week to review the previous week. Go back through your 7 days of journaling, do some reflection, see any patterns that you keep repeating, whether good or bad, and then set up your next week with intentionality. How are you going to show up? What are some goals you have for yourself to manage situations differently? How did you show up in the previous week that was really great and you want to bring that into this week? How did you show up last week that you want to improve and to manage your triggers better? And then set up a plan for that. As leaders, reflective journaling serves as a place for you to analyze your actions and decisions so that you can assess outcomes, impacts, and lessons that can be applied then in new situations. Reflecting on our practice as leaders and just as people in our everyday lives allows for a conscious awareness of our actions and tendencies, ones that we may not be aware of because we've fallen into autopilot mode in our day-to-day lives. I promise you, as we dive deeper into this work of personal leadership, this practice will serve as a foundational component. This really is the first challenge. Will you commit to doing this, knowing that this could change your current state? Or will you choose not to act and just keep complaining that nothing changes? It's simple to do, and it's simple not to do. But how you show up is up to you. If you're serious about changing your year, changing your life, changing your job, how you show up in the world, changing the nursing profession, we start here. And let's do it together. Your life really is up to you. The antidote to powerlessness is personal responsibility. So let's get started. Thank you guys for joining this first Coffee Break Edition episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I really hope you're going to put that reflective journaling into practice. I know it seems like something that's so small or it doesn't really fit and it's not going to solve your problems, but I hope you'll trust me, and I promise you that this is going to lead to more insight into your life and that you will start seeing changes. So you just have to start doing the work. So we will be back with another episode of the Shift Change Coffee Break Edition in about 4 weeks. And until then, if you have any questions, comments, or if you have a question you'd like me to answer on the podcast, just send it to amy@nurseleaders.ca, or you can connect with me through any of our social media channels. Just go to nurseleaders.ca/connect. And I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Bye. Hi, nurses. I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Shift Change podcast. I want to take a moment and talk to you about something really important that's happening this year. As you probably know, World Health Organization designated 2020 as Year of the Nurse and Midwife. And while it's important to celebrate the nurses and participate in all these events that are happening, we need to make sure that we are being strategic about making this the year that we really use our collective voice to raise the profile and status of nurses and advance our profession. Understandably, some of you may feel resistance to this call to action. After all, how can we expect nurses to raise the profile and status of nurses and advance the profession when oftentimes nurses aren't even getting a proper break to sit down, eat something, or even use the bathroom on their shift? But you know what? If we don't act and act now, nothing will ever change. No one is coming to save the nursing profession from the burnout and exhaustion, from the staffing crises and nursing shortage, from the violence and bullying, from the budget cuts, and all the other threats to our profession that we are currently facing. Only we can save ourselves. And that can only happen when we decide enough is enough. We must decide that this is the year that we are going to use our collective voice to shout our value to the world, to introduce innovative and revolutionary ideas into healthcare, to advocate for our patients and our profession, to shed the just a nurse mentality and claim our position as leaders, and in doing so, change our profession. This year, 2020, Year of the Nurse and the Midwife, you get to decide. Is this the year that everything changes? Is this the year that we finally say enough is enough and break through the status quo? Is this the year that you, yes, each one of you, decide that you are tired of just complaining and actually put in the work to make a change? Because the truth is, it is up to us. And nothing changes if no one changes. Let me say that again. Nothing changes if no one changes. There is a movement happening and it needs you. We are stronger together. Come join us as we disrupt the status quo and evolve our profession. It's time. It's our time. We're stronger together, so let's get started. If you want to know how you can join the movement of change, visit nurseleaders.ca/2020nurse to opt in for a free 3-part video series about how we can use 2020, the Year of the Nurse and Midwife, as the year we use our collective voice and lead our profession forward. So jump on over to nurseleaders.ca/2020nurse for all the details. I'll see you over there.